Hi, my name is Patrick Freewald. I'm going to be doing a reading for you today from my collection, In the Garden of Rusting Gods, which has this amazing cover art by the horror specialist Dean Samad, who is a UK artist who is just absolutely fantastic. He does horror covers almost exclusively, and he's amazing. The story I'm going to read for you today is called The Extermination Business. It's got some great line art by Greg Chapman, who's an Australian artist who did the line art for all of the stories in this collection. The typeface and all this beautiful work was done by Michael Bailey, who, if you ever need a book to be absolutely perfect, you want to call Michael Bailey. He's amazing. So the extermination business is a story that I wrote that I would not recommend anybody writing it the way I wrote this. It is it's a Facebook serial. I took the idea of pantsing. I'm very much a plotter, and I took the idea of just taking something and writing it by the seat of my pants, and I went crazy with it. I went 10 to 15 minutes a day at most, but no less, on Facebook every day. So I couldn't go back and edit. And it turned out to be this twisted, weird little noir that I didn't know where it was going as I was writing it. And I've never really written anything that way before, and it was a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoy it. This is called The Extermination Business. It was a dark and stormy kind of night, and I'd had four by the time. Let me start again. It was a dark and stormy kind of night, and I'd had four by the time the dame walked into my office. You know the deal. Black dress, red lipstick, half a cigarette hanging from her mouth. The thing is, she couldn't pull it off. You ever scratch your ass and get more than you bargained for? Yeah, she looked kind of like that. Mr. Szymanski? It's what the door says, Toots. Fatter than my ex-wife and twice as pretty, she tossed an envelope on my desk. I have a rat problem. Yeah, the extermination business isn't glamorous, but it keeps the lights on. I picked up the envelope, flipped it through the bills. 20s, 100 of them, give or take. Smart girl. Even a dame doesn't short Mike Szymanski. Where? I said, eyeing her up and down. Something about her seemed so familiar, like I'd seen her at a bat mitzvah plowing through the arugula or behind the dumpster at Eddie's doing favors for the local flavor. Nothing wholesome, nothing nice. You know the apartments off Loyola? Sure. I wouldn't call them apartments so much as a warren, one of those high-rise projects the cops avoid if they know what's good for them. Good way to get eaten. Lots of rats in a place like that. What's a broad like you care about it? They took my brother. He's only 12. When? Yesterday. No way the boy was alive, but no use telling her that. I shoved the envelope in the back of my pants, scooped up my gun off the desk, and stuck it in the holster under my flask. On second thought, I stuffed an extra handful of silver bullets in my pocket. Where rats? I fucking hate 'em. I followed her down the stairs, silver bullets jangling in my pocket. I'm Mindy, by the way. She took one last drag and flipped her cigarette butt into the gutter as we exited into the tiny parking lot. 4 spaces, 3 empty. The last occupied by my rusty white panel van circa Johnny Carson was still on the air. Michael Szymanski's Exterminator stood out in touched up green on the side over a painting of a legs up cockroach with X's for eyes. Where's your ride? I asked. My boyfriend dropped me off, figured I could ride with you. I paused, ran my tongue over my teeth for effect. Did he now? She nodded. What if I didn't take the job? We knew you would. Besides, the check cleared. I spat. All right, hop in. She got in the passenger side after I'd unlocked it, and we got on the road. By the time we hit Wrangell Avenue, her funk had invaded my nostrils and was taking hostages. Cigarette smoke and unwashed hair, body spray too manly, probably her boyfriend's, and a musty, farty something that reminded me of a guinea pig cage that hadn't been cleaned in too long. The beat-up coupe 3 cars behind us switched lanes when I did. Twice. Put on my blinker for the wrong exit, and so did it. And then we both drove on past. So, I said, we going to do this here, or are we going to wait till we get there? She stared at me, that kind of stare you get from a disgruntled cashier when you try to be funny. And they're all disgruntled. Just buy your crap and get out of the way. I made a show of putting on my seatbelt, then snuck my gun out of the holster left-handed. I don't know what went through her head at that moment. I'd like to think it was good thoughts. Maybe about her boyfriend, if he was real, about her kids, if she had any, puppy dogs and butterflies or something. Something better that would go through it later anyway. When those big buck teeth sank into my arm, I swung the pistol toward her morphing body and pulled the trigger twice. I expected the transformation, the elongating skull, the wiry fur sprouting from her everywhere, even the ferocity and speed of the attack. But I hadn't expected her to jerk the wheel. We swerved hard, skidded sideways at 70 miles an hour, and with a gun in my hand... That's my cat Mia joining the party. Let's try that again. And with a gun in one hand and a giant rat-faced psycho gnawing on the other, we hit the curb hard. The van flipped, rolled, her teeth still savaging my arm and still growing. All of which totally would have been survivable if we didn't flip right over the overpass railing and into traffic below. Timing is everything, I guess. Here's the offender. She just knocked a bunch of stuff off my shelf. To be continued. My van crashed into the asphalt with a sickening crunch, staving in the passenger side and throwing Mindy or Linda or whatever her name was right on top of me. Addled and shell-shocked, for a second neither of us did anything but stare and wrangle up our ability to think. She'd gone full rat by then, 6 feet long, lean and wiry and bloody-mouthed, and her breath was like getting slapped in the face with a sweaty wrestler's hairy armpit. I put my gun under her chin, only I no longer held it. Like everything else in my van, it had become so much flotsam. So instead, I pushed, pinning her head against the ceiling long enough to undo my seatbelt. She scratched and clawed at my arms, and her back legs shredded my shirt and made mincemeat of my stomach. I just about started to get angry when a wailing horn and the screech of air brakes announced the arrival of a speeding tractor-trailer with no room to swerve. It obliterated my van, the dame, and me, smeared us across several hundred feet of highway in a red-brown streak of blood and gasoline. And that really pissed me off. I rose up from the cold metal slab and shook to clear the cobwebs from my brain, or at least to get the spiders off them. Looking down, I couldn't help but notice the clean boxers, simple black cotton with bright yellow smiley faces on them like a too cheerful Batman. The baby-faced coroner stood over another body, Mindy. Chest cut open to put each flabby breast face down on either side, organs in a tray on another table. Her face still sported a good chunk of charred fur, and her incisors had not retracted. He dictated another sentence, then switched off the recorder as I hopped down. "Hey, Mike." He jerked his head to indicate a plastic bag by the door. "Your stuff's over there." "Did you put these on me?" He grinned. "No, Sheila did. You know I hate it when you guys dress me." Dave shrugged. "Wasn't much to dress. We had to play a little leg bone connected to the shin bone." I shuffled across the floor and looked down at her. "So what gives?" He shrugged again. "The accident drove her right shoulder through her skull. Looks like someone shot her in the right shoulder with a silver bullet, so it proved fatal. Know anything about that?" "How could I know anything? I wasn't even here." I grabbed my stuff on the way out the door. "See you next time." Now, Zofia Szymanski was the kind of woman who would loan a cup of sugar to a neighbor, then give them shit about it for the next 37 years. I couldn't quite say that because Bob died at year 36 and a half, probably from regret that his ex-wife borrowed half a cup of sugar from my mom 36 and a half years earlier. "What are you talking about? You need to borrow the car. And what are you doing in your underwears?" I pushed past her into the apartment, not much more than a shoebox with a giant plasma TV. Mom grunted in annoyance but let me through, hobbling after me on her walker as I helped myself to the bottle of scotch on the table. Duncan's Dew, the perfect blend for stripping graffiti from bathroom walls. I poured 2 fingers and swallowed them. Savoring the burn in my stomach and shuddering at the taste of peat and burnt hair aged in urine barrels. My van got totaled, Ma. She grunted as I slapped her hand away from the smiley-faced boxers. That was you that died last night? I sighed at the rhetorical question and the muttered Polish blessings and blasphemies that followed and poured myself another double. Can I borrow the car or not? I've got a job to do. Sure, Mikey, she said. Take the Benz, but don't you scratch it. Now, a jet black 1971 Mercedes-Benz W108 should have been a classic car, especially with a single owner over all of those almost 50 years. But two things no machine can hold out against are entropy and Zofia Szymanski. I opened the creaking door and slid inside, the cracks in the leather seats catching at my leg hair as my ass shoved aside a McDonald's bag smeared with moldy ketchup. It didn't quite latch when I closed it, so I opened it again and slammed it hard. Ancient upholstery rained on me from the ceiling. Mom groused out the window at the rough treatment. I ignored her. She loved this damn car so much she'd have breastfeed it if she could have. At least the engine sputtered to life on the third try. I backed out of the drive and headed to the office. There wasn't much chance they'd be looking for me there, what with my being dead and all, but maybe they knew something most people didn't. So just to be careful, I popped the glove box and pulled out Mom's Taurus 545 Raging Bull. One of the original 5-rounders, the revolver sported a 5.25-inch barrel, a hair trigger, weighed a ton, and kicked like a mule. Each slug had been made special, lead for weight, silver for trouble, blessed and benedicted and danced over by priests and rabbis and imams and shamans just for good measure. The hollow points had been filled with gelatinized holy water. In this line of work, you couldn't be too careful. I walked up the stairs, revolver in hand, and rolled my eyes when I got to the second-floor landing. My door lay ajar, glass shattered, safety screen torn through. The hall lay silent, but my nose told me they'd left a surprise. Great. I stepped inside to a catastrophe. Laptops smashed to pieces, desk contents scattered, filing cabinets overturned with the papers scattered everywhere. Whatever they were looking for, they didn't find. All that crap was just for show to make it look like I dealt with bees and ants and things. 15 years of paperwork for jobs never done, invoices never paid. Extermination was a cash business. You ever seen a mouse turd? They're shaped like an elongated football about the size of a grain of rice, brown-black, real solid. Were-rat turds are much the same, but like the size of your thumb. This explained the thumb-sized football shapes on my desk floor and paper piles. Stupid. I leaned over one, breathed in real deep, let the body-processed fast food and dumpster garbage just fill my nostrils. All the things considered, it wasn't quite as bad as Dunkin's do. I sampled a few more, careful not to touch them. And now I had 2 clues. The scent of 3 rats and a dark, beat-up coupe, license plate STS 3951. Shouldn't be too hard to find, but now I needed some clothes. The extermination business has certain hazards, and I'm not just talking about careening off an overpass into traffic while some crazy broad is chewing your arm off. Turns out people don't much like getting killed and tend to take it personally. That whole it's not personal, it's business thing is for the movies, and having a home address isn't a good idea. So Mike Szymanski's apartment isn't rented out to Mike Szymanski, it's rented out to Chris Picknett. Chris is the best kind of roommate. Dead. He doesn't eat much, keeps the vermin out, and doesn't have the corporeality to be much more than an amusement. He flicks the lights and rattles the cupboards now and then because he doesn't like company, especially when that company shot him in the face 15 years earlier. Don't worry, he deserved it. After making sure I wasn't tailed, I made it home, took a nice long shower to wash off the disinfectant from the morgue, and made myself a breakfast of champions, a Pop-Tart with a half-dozen cigarettes. Chris unplugged the toaster halfway through, so I ate it lukewarm. Any excuse for a party. Now, you might expect me to have some beat-up desktop computer with a big chunky monitor circa 1995. It fits the stereotype, sure, but the demands of my work require something with a little more oomph. In 2009, I traded my iPad, $12,000, and a vial of Virgin's Princess's Tears for a sleek black machine of unknown provenance. You know how a genie in a bottle will grant wishes in exchange for its freedom? Well, it turns out that an efreet in a motherboard is right at home as long as she's helping you kill people. She calls herself Suffolk, which almost certainly isn't her real name, but it didn't matter to me either way. I typed in the license plate and found the car reported stolen, found, and impounded waiting release. A dead end. So I exhaled the scent of the idiots who trashed my apartment into the USB port. 2 seconds later, I had dossiers on siblings Tim, Gina, and Danny Bianchi, and their sister Mindy, R.I.P., and a home address for Danny on Ogilvy Manor, Ogilvy Moor, one of the newer McMansions clustered off the interstate, a maze of cul-de-sacs and $500,000 homes backed up to the state forest. Weird, a family of rats living in a wolf neighborhood. Really weird. Suffolk purred, her fans whirring in that pleased, someone's gonna die way she had. I don't think she cared whether or not that someone was me. Stakeouts are boring as death. 3 days of stakeouts in the forest behind Ogilvy Moor are boring as death and itchy. Between the mosquitoes and the horseflies, I must have lost a pint of blood, but there wasn't any world in which I'd have been dumb enough to storm the place or even get close enough to trip an alarm. Given the number of security cameras dotting the place, there had to be alarms. And wolves weren't the type to call the cops. Nah. An amateur astronomer's telescope and a wood blind told me everything I needed to know. 1. The Bianchis were total slobs, denning up in piles of old clothes, half-eaten takeout cartons, cheese-encrusted pizza boxes, and Jenny Light cans. But all the mess was restricted to the inside of the house. The outside remained immaculate, maintained by a truckload of landscapers and gardeners that worked their way through the entire development. 2. They were on friendly terms with the owner, a wolf named Carl Murray, who lived next door. Ex-military, three-piece suit, gold rings and gold chains, he drove a mint Genesis G90 in lime green and wore $4,000 shoes. $4,000 shoes. Worked for Lyze Pharmaceuticals, a multinational outfit famous for curing latent vampirism in the early teens. Those bastards cost me a lot of business. 3. They didn't bother to feed the 4 girls caged in the basement. So I got sick of waiting. These idiots spent all day wallowing in their own filth, smoking blunts and playing video games, and if they cared about Mindy at all, it wasn't enough to go to her funeral, closed casket for what was left of her, municipal lot, no stone. Murray left his house every day at 6 a.m. to go for a jog, ran the same route every time, tailed by a black SUV loaded with goons, and got home by 6:45 to shower and eat breakfast with his wife, a smoking hot brunette whose pre-shower routine involved a couple lines of powder and Cuervo pre-mixed chugged from a bottle she kept stashed in the back of their bedroom closet. I guess margaritas are an anytime food. Anyway, Miss Murray had made a name for herself in the pole dancing business circa 20 years ago, and by made a name for herself, I mean managed not to meth out like everyone else she shared a stage with and retired with all of her teeth. Along the way, she might have met a dashing young policeman by the name of Mike Zemansky, maybe before his first marriage, and before he died the first time. Back then, she went by Scarlet Shows with a Z, 2 T's and a Z. But I knew her as Naomi. Fuck it. I rang the bell. My toe tapped as I waited, and I'd love to say I was keeping beat with a song in my head, but unless that drummer was a methed out ferret, I'd have to admit to nerves. You only get so many true loves, and I'd plowed through my share. Naomi opened the door with a sleepy, "My husband just left and I've already chugged another quart of discount margaritas and done 2 more lines of Coke" smile. I gave it back, trying to keep the disappointment from my eyes. Not at the crow's feet, the 30 extra pounds, the bags under her eyes. Everybody gets old. Well, almost everybody. She wanted to be a singer, a dancer, a diva, a star, and here she was, Mrs. Carl Murray, queen of tract housing for rich assholes. "Hey, Nio, how's dancing?" Her eyes widened, red lips opening in an O of shocked recognition. "Mikey?" I pushed past her into the entryway, something I'd done 100 times under very, very different circumstances, and grunted in surprise at the little .38 revolver she pushed into my gut. "What are you doing here, Mikey?" "Me?" I brushed my knuckles across her cheek. Ain't that the wrong question? She jammed the gun deeper, cold and hard, through my shirt. Her hair smelled like strawberries, her skin like oil of Olay. "You still kill people for a living?" I nodded once. "A man's got to eat. And you're here for Carl." With a shake of my head, I reached down and put my hand on the gun, closed my warm fingers around hers, cold and papery with years of smoking, drugs, and, well, years. Makeup can hide a lot, but hands always betray you. "I don't care two shits about Carl. I'm here for the rat problem you got next door." Her mouth twisted into distaste. "Oh, them." "Yeah, them, and you know you can't hurt me, so why don't you move this?" I said, and pushed the pea shooter down into the side, stepped into her so that when I looked down our lips almost touched. "And tell me what you know about them." Her breath mingled the faint brightness of peppermint with fake lime and cheap tequila, but I loved her pouty smile and all the other things she could do with that mouth. "Why don't I just shoot you anyway and feed you to 'em? Could you come back from that?" I shrugged. "I've had worse." "Than being eaten by were-rats?" "You bet," I said. "I once had my heart broken by the most beautiful woman in the world." A hint of a smirk turned up her lips. "Point me at her. I'll kill the bitch." I kicked the door closed with my heel. "Nah, doll, don't do that. Suicide's a sin." Naomi turned on her heel and virtually stalked into the open living room as her flimsy robe fell away, fully exposing the fluorescent green skirt and too tight red halter that barely contained her curves. She flopped down on the white leather couch and crossed her legs just lazily enough to give a glimpse between. Nothing I hadn't seen before, but well worth the look even 20 years later. Her lazy smile told me she'd caught me and had been fishing. "You know, Carl will kill you if he finds you here. He doesn't like, competition." The pistol had disappeared during the walk, in a cushion down her skirt. I had no idea. Neat trick. "So he's a legitimate businessman?" Her slow blink told me nothing. "I thought this was about the neighbors." I shrugged. "You brought him up." "Then let's stop talking about him." "Okay." I sat on the matching love seat kitty corner to her, ran my hands across the creamy white leather. "Nice digs. So what's the deal with the rats?" A tiny quiver shuddered through her, and she tried to hide it with a nonchalant shrug. "Why do you want to know, Mikey?" "They tried to kill me." "Did you deserve it?" Well, probably, but that doesn't mean I'll take it lying down. What's their deal?" Another shrug. "They keep to themselves." "Then how about the girls in their basement?" "What girls?" "Come on, Nio. I don't know what you're talking about." "You can't play stupid, not with me. I know you way too well." "It's been 20 years." "Yeah, Nao, but people like us don't change. What am I dealing with here?" Her head lolled back under the couch, almost popping her jugs from her top. Too bad on the almost. And she groaned, mouth open, wide at the ceiling. "Why are the men in my life so freaking aggravating?" I grinned. "Ever tried picking one that ain't a delinquent?" She snorted. "Nope." Naomi looked up with a twinkle in her eye, that old familiar smile on her lips. "What are you doing tonight, Mikey?" "No," I said. "You're not changing the subject." "Carl's having a little soiree at La Villa. I could get you in." I shook my head as violently as any headshake has ever been shooken. "Oh, no. Don't mess with the leeches. I don't. I never have. I never will." She pouted, as fake as it was enticing. "Oh, come on. I thought you wanted to know about the girls." I held up my hands as if warding off an unwanted advance, which, come to think of it, I would have liked to have been warding off. "No, no. The rats tried to bump me off. I just want to know why or who put them up to it. I don't have any track with vampires, and I do not want one." "I never took you for a coward, Mikey." "I don't have to be a coward to be smart. Nothing good ever came from that mess, and I'm not about to jump in. That vampire werewolf thing is way too Kate Beckinsale for my tastes, and she only lived through that shit because she was boning the director." Naomi smiled, bright and happy for the first time. Do you think she knew? What? That her meal ticket came from her marital status? I looked around the douchey McMansion for effect. How could she not? Naomi scowled. No, Dick. That they could get it so wrong. Yeah, I said. Who'd have thought that two societies entirely founded on eating people wouldn't be so realistic? She frowned. Werewolves don't eat people. Well, no more than bankers do. Is that a Jewish joke? Nah, been a long time since I've made any claim to that. You never struck me as anti-capitalist. Jesus, Nio, what are you doing, stalling? She laughed. Not anymore. The door exploded inward, shards of cheap wood peppering us both as squads of goons burst through the sudden opening. I shot the first between the eyes and dove for cover, but the second opened up with his AK, tearing holes through the love seat, my clothes, and my torso. I managed to punch around through his heart before the third blew my hand to tatters. How? Carl Murray walked in behind a squad of black-clad goons, each uglier than the last, after he'd been shot. I sucked air, some of it down my throat, some of it through the hole in my chest. The fuck, Carl? I managed, more wheeze than words. Carl shook his head, a bemused frown on his face. Only you would be so stupid to come in here after I sent people to kill you. Why? Naomi answered for him. Why are you so stupid, babe? Nobody knows. But now you're mine, Carl said. Finally mine. I dragged the pistol up to my temple and chuckled through the hurt as the goon squad drove to stop me, stumbling over the Murrays and each other in an effort to reach the gun. No! Naomi cried. I pulled the trigger. Pow. Drink time. Mom's voice wasn't half as annoying as her old lady slaps on my cheek. Too fast and not hard enough to be anything but an irritation. At least dying hurt, then ended. Her voice carried into the afterlife and beyond, dragging me back to consciousness I didn't deserve and hadn't earned. Come on, Mikey, come on. Where's the car, Mikey? What'd you do? I told you not to scratch it, Mikey. I groaned, tried to roll away from the mild irritation of her attempts to wake me up and the major irritation of her too annoying to be Fran Drescher voice. The slapping stopped. Her voice didn't. Alas. I love that car, Mikey. What did you do with it? The slapping resumed. Come on, you're almost there. Tell your mother, Mikey. Where's the Benz? Come on, Mikey. Wake up, darling boy. Where's my car? I smacked her hand away, skin burning at the novel sensation over new nerves. Jesus, Ma, stop it! My throat was so dry you could shake it and serve it to James Bond. Now you yell at me after all I've suffered for you? I bring you back from the dead, and this is the thanks I get? Some son you are, lying there all hopeless like. I could have had a puppy. I could have gotten a puppy. At least it would have loved me. Where is my car? I groaned, licked my lips. I'd have come back anyway, Ma. Yeah, but where would you have come back? You think they'd have morgued you or dumped you in the swamp again? They're too good for that. They're too smart for that. Come on. What are you messing with furries with anyway? Ain't nothing but trouble, especially now. I raised you smarter, didn't I? Even if you lost my car. Come on, Ma. How long has it been? Almost 2 weeks. That's what a spleen grow gets you. Kidney. You only need one so I can leave the other here. You know that. I reached down and rubbed a fresh scar on my abdomen. She not only knew that, she'd already taken the new one and put it in the freezer. How about smarts, kiddo? You got any of them? Seems my son ain't got none no matter how much brains he's got. You pain me, son, more than that day I made the mistake of getting a pap smear and a mammogram back to back. That was a hell of a day. Where's my fucking car? I sighed long and slow, and imagined lighting her on fire, just once, just to kill her for a while. One glorious minute of her wreathed in golden, flickering flame, followed by a week or three of blissful silence. And then I returned to reality. Jeff's, Ma. It's at Jeff's. Finally, she left the room, swearing about storage fees as she put on her coat. The door slammed as I got up. This time I didn't even have to put underwear on, but hell, it's just family and I knew where to find some. After all, I'd grown up here. Clothed in fresh jeans and a well less than fresh Rush Roll the Bones t-shirt, I took stock of what I thought I knew. 1. The Were-Rats had tried to kill me. 2. They worked for Carl Murray. Taken together, that meant they thought I had some way of making it stick. That they had some way of making it stick, because otherwise they wouldn't bother. But 3. Naomi knew about the rats, and the girls, and me. Which means maybe point 1 wasn't true. So if not, what's the game? I don't blame Naomi for selling out an old flame, especially not to her meal ticket. I just wonder what she thought she knew about me that the wolves would care about. I mean, they couldn't care that I'm an exterminator. The last Baron I'd killed was a totally clean hit, and if I hadn't had taken the job, someone else would have. No way Murray held that against me. But they sure wanted a piece of me. I laughed in spite of myself, right there at Mom's kitchen table. They had to know they couldn't torture a guy like me, not for anything but fun. So was it fun? Or did he have some other boil on his ass? And how much did that matter? The girls. That had to be a Naomi. She knew I'd never let innocent kids rot in a basement. Never. She had my number like an old Catholic lady on bingo night and stamped those fucking cards like a Sunday morning chump. But just because they were bait didn't mean they weren't in danger. Shit. If you ever have to sleep on a bench, cover your feet in newspaper. Unless it's the Olympics, nobody pays any attention to the homeless. And if you're sleeping on a bench with newspaper covering your feet, then you're something less than human, less than worthy of a human's attention. That sucks. But it's also an opportunity. The man in the suit passed me by without a second glance. I got up and shuffled after him, and nobody paid me any notice. 5'10", dude bro haircut, he walked with his head held high, buoyed with self-worth, yet he trucked along with the frantic pace of a man who served impatient masters. But in this kind of crowd, nobody went all that fast, and crazy-eyed when it suited me, even the douchiest of douchebag tourists gave me a wide berth. Suit Boy walked from Murray's credit union into the Classy Kitty, a boil on the city's ass, but not the place bouncers would let me through, not in jeans and a t-shirt. And he came out 3 minutes later, sans briefcase, a mule and too cocky to leave with an identical case. No surprise. If a cop saw such an obvious move in this town, they'd be more likely to shake you down for a cut than to turn you in. Which meant, okay, the hard way. It's tough to balance the amount of blunt force trauma necessary to knock a dude senseless without knocking the senses right out of him, but I counted myself somewhat an expert on the matter. Suit Boy folded under the sap, a can of dog food wrapped in a sock, and I dragged him into the alley. "Wake up," I said, slapping the kid on the face opposite the soup can shiner. Jeez, I was turning into my mother. Kid, yeah. Early 20s maybe, just scruffy enough to prove he could grow some scruff, with soft hands and the soft cheeks of someone who'd been hitting the sauce too hard. The spaghetti sauce. He half kneeled against the dumpster behind the hardware store, ankles hog-tied behind his back to a loop around his neck, arms spread to either side with his wrists tied to the dumpster's feet. His eyes opened, revealing bloodshot sclera, the left flecked with blood from the can I'd bashed into his temple. Glazed, confused, they widened suddenly and his body flopped against the restraints. "It's 8-inch steel wire, kid. You're wasting your time. 5:30 seconds, but who's counting? You'll cut your own throat before you break a strand." "Do you know who I am?" I kneeled on his left hand, splaying his fingers out against the pavement, and brought the hammer down on his pinky. A wet splorch softened the impact, and blood splattered across my jeans. As he screamed, I stuffed his jacket sleeve into his mouth. I had his tie and cufflinks in my pocket, both very nice. When he stopped writhing enough so I figured he could understand, I pushed his head back against the cold metal and looked him straight in the frantic, pained eyes. Rule number 1. I ask the questions. Clear? His eyes fluttered, so I hefted the hammer. Are we clear? He nodded, slow at first, then with some enthusiasm, while I tested my grip on the wooden shaft, turning the head to catch the metal in the yellow-orange halogen streetlight. Rule number 2. You get to decide how often I use this. I'd rather not use it again, rather not kill you either, but I figure I've got 19 tries before I run out of things that you can live without. Are we clear? Another nod. Good. Now I have some questions. So it turns out the kid didn't know much. I sent him home with a bandaged pinky and damaged pride and advice to run very fast and very far. A risk? Sure, but I'm a big softy. Murray's people would kill him for squealing, even if he ratted me out, and maybe he'd stand a chance on the lam. Not the wolves enjoyed a hunt or nothing, but despite what they thought, they hadn't been the apex predator hereabouts for a long time. The thing about gangsters you don't really get from TV and movies is just how god-awful stupid they are. Their power comes from their brutality, their willingness to inflict pain and suffering and damage beyond what most people could bear, and somewhere in that equation they get cocky and start thinking they're special, that the rules of the universe don't apply to them, that they can buy or fight or kill their way out of anything. But Murray wasn't even an alpha wolf, just a high-up enforcer who put the screws to the right bankers and investors to make the pack a whole lot of money. And that made him richer and more successful than most, but still not the king. A king, sure, of pseudo-rich tract housing, complete with his own queen, and some pet rats, and girls in his basement, girls he'd gotten explicitly to bait me. According to the kid, those girls had come from the classic kitty, rented by the day against their will from the owner and pimp, a real piece of work named Johnny Honest. Johnny had a few mainstay dancers, but they were just for show. Mostly, he liked to trawl schoolyards with his bad boy good looks, finding young flesh and hooking them on heroin, then hooking them on hooking to pay for the next hit. He left work most nights at 3 a.m. with an escort of goons courtesy of his boss to make sure he got home okay. They'd sling him up the driveway to his house, let him through the front door, and wish him a good night. When his keys fumbled in the lock, I sat up on the edge of his bed and picked up his shotgun loaded with silver and pelletized holy water. Something told me he didn't quite trust his bosses. It took Johnny 10 minutes of dicking around before he made it to the bedroom, putting away dishes, taking out the trash, taking a leak, rubbing one out. Finally, he walked in just his underwear and flicked on the light. His eyes bugged out when he met the gun barrel. They were dark brown, a little too close together. If he was a wolf, he was a mongrel. More likely just a human running with the wrong pack. Either way, the ammo would do the job. You know who I am? His head shook, but his nervous little eyes didn't believe him either. Try again. You gonna shoot me, Szymanski? My shoulders twitched, the barest hint of a shrug. Maybe. Whether or not it's fatally depends on how forthcoming you are. Ain't no hits on me right now. Why you even here? This is a pet project. Now spill. He tried to man up, but couldn't keep his eyes off the barrel. What do you want to know? The girls you sold Murray. He tell you why he needed them? Yep. Bait. For me. He nodded. And how long do they have them? He shrugged. Long as they want. They's bought and paid for. What happens to them when the wolves are done with them? He shrugged and grunted something that might have, in some iteration of the English language, sounded something not utterly unlike, I don't know. Yeah. My finger tightened on the trigger. Try again. They're just girls, man. A million more like 'em every day. So the plan is to kill them? Not my plan, but the plan. Another shrug. At least he had the decency to look constipated. Why do they want me? I have no fucking idea. I sighed. Long and dramatic. Look, if I have to say try again one more time, I'm going to blow your brains across that wall. They want what you have, and they think they can take it. They do. Got some machine or something to suck it right out of you. That's ridiculous. Mom's a way easier target. Too old or something. I grunted. If that was their problem, they had no idea what they were doing. But if it kept them off Mom's back, it kept them off Mom's back. Nobody needed that kind of trouble. Okay, so it's got to be me, and you're in on the take. Hell yeah, you'd be too if it wasn't you. Yeah, living forever's a fucking picnic. You should try it sometime. Anyone who ain't you would kill for it. You can't tell me otherwise. Okay, so you're in. What about the Bianchis? He snorted. Yeah, man, the rats don't know shit. Just in it for the crash pad. they think they's living the life. Call them and tell them you got a job for them at 8th and Barkley. What's at 8th and Barkley? Just make the fucking call, and then you'll let me go? Sure. He made the call and hung up. The blast took off most of his skull above the right eye, as you'd think a shotgun at point-blank range would do. I wiped my prints off the gun and dropped it on the floor next to his steaming corpse. His bowels let go in a flatulent burst as I walked out, perhaps the prettiest thing about Johnny Honest's whole damn life. So you know what's at the intersection of 8th and Barkley? Not a damned thing. 2 vacant lots bulldozed years ago as part of some de-shitification project, then left to the weeds, what hard-scrabble nonsense could grow amid the cracked asphalt and decaying remains of cinder blocks. Across the street stood a gas station abandoned sometime before Eisenhower died, too run down to renovate and too toxic to bulldoze. A rusty-ass van rolled up across the gas station, tires crackling on gravel. Tim and Danny hopped out, leaving Gina in the driver's seat. Most of these low-level douchebags wouldn't know a woman's value to a job if it bit them on the nuts and relegated them to getaway driver. Gina was kind of cute for a rat, and Johnny Honest thought with his dick, so maybe she could have helped with the transaction they thought they were about to make. But no, they left her in the van with the keys in the ignition, picking her nails and listening to the radio way too loud. I knocked on the window with my newest pistol, the other finger to my lips. She looked up, rolled her eyes, and got out of the van as I motioned her to do so. Don't say a word, I whispered. What? Suppressed and subsonic, but at 2 feet away, the bullet entered her left temple at a downward angle, spraying a narrow jot of brains and bits of skull across the side of the vehicle. The idiots leaning against the other side didn't move as I dragged her out and dumped her behind the rusty pumps, just smoked their cigarettes and talked under the music. I waited 3 minutes until their complaints about Johnny's lateness got loud enough to hear over what passed for music, then rounded the corner and double-tapped Danny in the face. As he collapsed, I turned the pistol on Tim, but held my fire. Hey, Tim, sorry about your brother. You want to see your sister again? Hands at 2 and 10, Tim Bianchi made the last turn into Murray's cul-de-sac. I looked like shit and smelled worse in his brother's clothes, but with the baseball cap, maybe whoever watched the cameras wouldn't notice until far too late. Maybe. Where's Gina? Tim asked. I rolled my eyes. She's safe, and if you want her to stay that way, you'll shut the fuck up and do what you're told. I don't even know what you want. And you're not going to. He'd already told me they'd been paid to kidnap me, at least somewhat verifying Johnny Ann's story. Just pull in the drive and run cover like I told you, and when you get inside, you'll get to see your sister. You promise she's alive? I promise. I'm lots of things, but not a liar. Integrity is everything in the extermination business. We got out of the van and kept my head low. Followed Tim to the door. He punched in a code and turned the handle as the alarm blipped safe. One hand on his back, I followed him inside and shot him through both lungs in the foyer. He fell on his side, then rolled to his back, mouth open and closing like a fish. I fucking hate floppers. He twitched and spasmed, eyes wide in uncomprehending outrage at my betrayal, chest filling with blood even as it pooled ever wider across the floor. I know, I'm a terrible person. Person. A pair of bolt cutters made short work of the lock on the basement door. I flicked the light and creaked my way down the stairs, nose crinkled against the horrible stench of sickness, piss, and shit. Way too familiar. Hey ladies, you want to get out of here? They stared at me with starvation-blackened eyes, young, innocent, uncomprehending. Even after I cut the chain holding them to the radiator, they didn't move, probably fearing some kind of trick. There's a van outside. I'm going to take you up there, and we're going to leave. It took 2 minutes of unbelieved reassurances before I gave up and ordered them upstairs with the gun, barking like a drill sergeant. At the top of the stairs, one looked from Tim Bianchi's body to me with the first dawning of hope, and I winked at her. Her eyes fell, too distrusting of anything remotely human. We left the cul-de-sac at 70 miles an hour, but not before I'd doused Murray's house with 16 gallons of kerosene I'd found in Bianchi's garage, with trails to both propane tanks at the houses to either side. The flames had just started to flicker over the intervening streets by the time we hit the highway. The way reporting goes in this town, I still don't know if those tanks ignited. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think Murray and his goon squad arrived to see it happen. Where are you taking us? Her voice came out a whisper, cowed and terrified. Do you have any food? I shook my head. Born in this kind of starvation, I knew a stop at McDonald's would kill them. Sorry, Toots, you're going to a hospital and they're going to decide what you eat and when. A look of alarm crossed her face, so I put my hands on hers, all skin and bones. I know these people. They're good folks. They'll take good care of you. That's what Johnny said, another muttered. Yeah, well, Johnny's dead and you're not. Really? All four of them reared back in disbelief. Killed him myself with his own shotgun. Now please be quiet. They didn't say another word except to thank me when the nurses wheeled them away. Maybe they'd live. Maybe they'd get clean. Best I could offer was another chance. Same as it's always been. I sucked on the cigar and blew a smoke ring out over my bare feet where it surrounded the setting sun over the rooftops. Nasty habit, Johnny, Ma said. It's just a cigar. Not that, you putz. I've been smoking cigars since Columbus. You think your mother doesn't know a good cigar? You got your feet on the furniture again. You trying to give me pinworms or what? Even an idiot would know better. Can we even get pinworms? That's not the point, Mikey. It's just gross. Sure, Ma. I put my feet on the floor, thereby increasing my chances of getting pinworms, and downed the rest of my scotch, every bit as hideous as the first time, but it warmed my belly. We didn't say anything for a while, just waited out the last of the night stars as dawn twilight smothered them in reds and oranges. I stopped breathing until she glared at me, and I heard the unspoken admonishment clear as day, that amateur hour shit will get you caught. At last she spoke, but not to yell at me. So what about that girl? And the wolf she's with? I don't know, Ma. I think maybe we should skip down. I could become a cop again. You could run another shop. The Samanskys would fade into memory while we get some ground under us a while. We come back after 3 or 5 decades maybe, and one or both of them will be dead and we'll have less to worry about. Everything ties up in a neat little bow. We can keep your house in a dummy holding. Pay someone to upkeep it. Oh, you think you know what's good for your mother? You think I haven't done enough waiting, Mikey, after Cordoba, after Vilna, Prague? All I ever do is wait, Mikey, wait and wait. Those kids didn't make you for nothing, my darling son. They made you to save them. My eyes closed on the encroaching dawn, dark but not dark enough behind heavy lids. I know, Ma, I know. It's been 80 years and all I can taste is paper. And those kids, they gotta be dead by now. I took another pull off the cigar. All of them. Who's left to save? There's always more kids, Mikey. And that broad of yours, she's up to no good. Another puff, another dark thought, and I almost put my feet up just to spite her. I hated when she was right, but she was right, and there wasn't no running from it. Born with a mission in my mouth, I couldn't walk away from it no matter what I believed, no matter what it cost me, no matter if those who gave it to me lived on through their children's children but rested in the ground themselves. And yeah, I didn't know what craziness Murray and his pack dreamed they had on me, and I had no idea what to do about Naomi, but I literally don't have it in me to run away. So when the clock hit 8, I called up Tony Wheels for a new van, still in the house for saving his great-grandfather from the camps. The sixth van he'd given me, and every one a gift I didn't deserve. Still, it paid to have friends. The extermination business isn't glamorous, but it keeps the lights on. There it is. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.